Welcome to the Decipher podcast, and welcome to our episode on the social network. We have Melanie Ensign, our friend, who runs her own business and is here for reasons you will find out shortly, and Lindsay O'Donnell Welch. How are you guys?
I
It's so good
would
to see you
also
both.
love to know those reasons, Dennis.
Oh, you're going to find out. You're going to find out, Mel. I'm really excited to talk about this movie. Lindsay, you and I were trying to figure out what movie to do next for the Hacker Movie podcast, and I was kind of thinking of one of the older ones, like The Conversation, or one of those 70s ones that I know you definitely haven't seen. And for whatever reason, I asked you about The Social Network. I was like, oh, what do you think about this? And you were like, oh, yeah, that'd be a fun one. And we were trying to figure out who to get. And I think I mentioned Melanie, and you were like, oh, yeah, that'd be fun. And you did not know that Mel had worked at Facebook.
I had no idea. It's like the perfect match.
Well, is it? Yeah.
Kind of.
So
I think that's the real reason I'm here, is because it is, in fact, not the perfect match.
It's not, but I didn't know that, Mel. This is not, I mean, it's sort of my fault. But so, Lindsay, Mel had never seen this movie.
So not while you were, so not even.
So the movie came out before I worked at Facebook. So this is a bit of context. Like, the two of you know my background, but for the folks watching who don't know, my career prior to starting my own company was in security PR. And this movie came out before I went to Facebook, but I'd never seen it. And there was a lot of stuff about Facebook's history that I didn't know before I went to work there, because, ironically, turns out that nobody outside of Silicon Valley follows Silicon Valley as much as they follow themselves, right? So there was a lot of kind of like internal culture, industry gossip, like all this stuff that matters a lot to the people who are living it, but the rest of the world is like, I think for a really long time, couldn't even have like identified like Mark in a lineup, right? Like, obviously that's not true now, but we're talking about like 2010,
Yeah.
And so the movie came out before I went to Facebook. I went to Facebook in 2015, and I was there until a month before the 2016 election. And it just, I think it's another episode to talk about all the reasons why I was just not a good culture fit for Facebook. But I hadn't seen the movie before I went there. And then after having worked there, I intentionally did not watch Facebook movies. I was like, I live this shit. I don't need to constantly be triggered by these characters that are, like frighteningly accurate. And so we just really didn't watch any of those movies. And so watching this, not only, a decade after having left the company, but it's like 15 years since the movie came out, was the world has changed so much, right? So it's like I was remembering things and kind of, reminded of things while watching the movie, but also thinking about, would I have reacted differently to any aspect of this if I had watched it in 2010 versus 2016 when I left versus now, right? Because there's a lot of characteristics and personalities in that movie that we see even outside Silicon Valley now.
Yeah.
And it just kind of the behavior and the decision making is no longer limited to the tech bros. So that's kind of what I was thinking as like my big takeaway as I was watching this. It's like, I'm feeling a certain way right now, but is this how I would have felt if I had seen the movie at a different point in my life?
Yeah. It's interesting. This is probably going to make you want to cry even more, Melanie. But Lindsay, I'm going to guess were you in college when this came out?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 2010. Yeah.
I'm not that sad about it.
Okay.
I graduated college in 2007.
Okay. All right.
Well, grad school. I finished grad school in 2007.
Okay. different story. But this is like, and this is also an important point in the movie and in just the connection is that your grad school was BU, which like
Yeah.
catches a whole bunch of stray bullets in this movie at the
Well,
very
yeah,
beginning, which is
there's the Facebook thing, and then there's the Harvard thing.
oh yeah, there's so much. Yes. Yeah. And I moved to Massachusetts in 2000, and so I remember like this was a big deal when this movie was being made in Massachusetts, even
Mhm.
though like most of it was not shot here. Like
Yeah.
almost all the college stuff was shot at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore because Harvard doesn't let people shoot there anymore. There's some like exterior shots that were in like Medford and Somerville and places like that, but none of the Harvard stuff. But it was a big deal that they were doing this movie here. And it was also the same time that they were shooting The Town with Ben Affleck and a couple of other
Mhm.
like big Boston movies. So it was a huge deal. But like you,
Remember when we
Melanie,
all thought that Boston was going to be like a big like movie hub?
yes. Yeah. People are like, oh, Boston. Like, okay.
Because
Yeah.
we had two famous actors,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
slash directors were like, oh well, this is a trend.
Right.
Two is a trend for Boston.
Yeah, for sure. But then they like kind of ran out of like Dennis Lehane books to make and they're like, let's just go back to LA or whatever. But I intentionally didn't watch this movie when it came out either because like I was, you know, I was already covering security for 10 years by the time this came out and had been in the
Yeah.
tech world and was just like, I do not need to see this movie, for different
It's
reasons than you.
also it's
Only
also
like,
not really. I mean, it's also not really related to security necessarily. In
it's
fact,
not.
when you
No.
mentioned the assignment to me, I was like, this is not a hacker movie. But
Hacker
you
in the
convinced
loose sense. Yeah.
yes, and apparently in the same loose sense that Mark Zuckerberg's character felt like he was hacking.
Right. Yes. Which they literally say as a line in the movie, which is
he was
incredible.
he
Yeah.
was so proud of himself for opening an unlocked door.
So proud. Yes. And writing algorithms on a window. But do
The
you,
gaping
Lynn,
holes in
do
the
you,
system, as you said.
yeah, yes. Lindsay, do you remember seeing this? Like, did you guys, like, were you waiting for this to come out or were you like, I'll go see it whenever I have a chance?
I think I saw it in theaters, but like I wasn't, waiting in lines or anything to see it.
Yeah.
But it was funny because to all of the points that you both had mentioned, yeah, I was. I'm from the Massachusetts area, so like love seeing that Boston represented in movies, and it's also interesting just from the perspective of that I was in college when this came out, and social media platforms while I was in college were very interesting and unique. Let's say, I mean, Facebook was obviously really big, but when you look at like Face Mash or whatever the other app was that he had spun out, like we
Yeah.
had a lot of those different types of like weird like social media type like services or like applications. Like we had like something called Like a Little where you would like post anonymously about someone you would see on campus, or like
Oh
we would
God.
have like something called Lulu where you would like rate guys. Like so that aspect of this really resonated with me weirdly, because I was like, people were just inventing all of these very odd social applications on campuses. So that was another thing where when I watched this movie I was like, wow, that's really a throwback. And
Yeah.
then also like the cybersecurity angle as well. Like at the time when I watched this, obviously I wasn't in cybersecurity, but looking back and rewatching it again, I was like, they did a CTF, like, things like that. So it was kind of interesting. It's been really funny to watch it over the years.
Yeah. I don't think I saw it until it might have been during the pandemic, honestly, like when I didn't have anything else
Oh,
to
well,
do.
dark.
Yeah, things were real dark. I was like, well, I
You're
might
like,
as
I
well watch.
went through the entire Netflix catalog and there was nothing left.
Yes, literally like reached the end and they were like, you got to go back to the beginning. So I'm pretty sure I watched this probably with my kids, honestly. And just you and I were texting about this yesterday, Melanie, when you were watching it. And we'll get into your like initial impressions, but I realized like how allergic I am to Aaron Sorkin's dialogue again while watching
Mm.
this. Like I was never a West Wing person. I've never seen a single episode of that show, which is I know a
That
crazy
I
thing
would say that show is even more triggering for me than this film. Because
with
I did not see that show until I think it was a year ago. I went
oh
through like the whole series. I'd never seen it when it was on TV.
yeah, me neither.
Um,
No.
and I was like, oh my God, this is why we got all of these like political press secretaries working in tech PR right now. Like these are their role models, and this explains so much of who I used to work for.
It's very true. The mannerisms, the patterns of speaking, the way that they say almost nothing, but in like 9 different circular ways and talk around everything, and
It's
it's
awful,
uh,
truly awful. And it's so disrespectful to waste people's time like that, where it's like, I'm here for a monologue. I'm not really here to
yeah,
convey any information that you need in order to do your job.
yeah. Were you a West Wing? Did you guys watch that, Linz? I'm sure you must have. Oh no.
No, yeah,
Okay.
no, we didn't.
Okay. Yeah,
Now
we
I
did.
probably won't.
No, I definitely will not. Like, I think the only Sorkin movie I really like is Moneyball, and that has,
Mm. It's because the
probably the
story's already written.
yeah, exactly. Yes. And this one, I guess, is sort of the timing of it is a little weird because there was like a treatment for a book about this story being circulated at the same time that the idea for the movie came out. So the book is, or excuse me, the movie is not based on the book. They were almost contemporaneous. The book by Ben Mesrich, but and this is only like the movie came out like 4 or 5 years after Facebook became, available to everybody. So it's still very early on in the development of the company, which is kind of a interesting time to make the story. And I also remember that I hated the framing device of the deposition cut back to 2003 for 20 minutes. Now here's more deposition, all that kind of stuff.
I loved that part
Oh,
because
really? Okay.
the depositions kept my interest when like the flashbacks would bore me. So like I just find all of these characters to be so unlikable that
Mhm.
like the depositions were the entertaining piece for me, where I'm like, cool, you're all punching each other in the face. This is well deserved. And so it was like that part was what like kept my attention. Whereas like when we would go back and actually watch, these individuals while they think they are, like when they're in the moment and they're not being questioned about what they did,
Yeah.
like they're living through the behavior and they're living through the decisions. That part was far less enjoyable for me to watch.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the comeuppance part, I guess I would say.
Yes. Yeah. I think we all like that because there really aren't it, almost it, almost no one in this story is likable. Like you said, Melanie, it's like Rashida Jones's character, who's extremely minor. You see her in like 3 scenes, likable because she's Rashida Jones. Um, Rooney Mara's character,
Also
who,
because her line at the end,
yeah,
like her very last line, I was like, and that was worth. Well, I don't want to say the whole movie was worth that one line, um, but I was like, yes, finally, somebody who like has come in from the outside. It's not somebody who has been on the journey with them. Somebody coming from the outside, but who now knows like really intimate details about the whole saga and everything, is walking away from the whole experience being like, if you're not an asshole, stop being one.
yeah, stop trying to, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, yes, I'm paraphrasing because she's like, you're not an asshole, but you're trying really hard to be one, which is essentially being like, you are one because that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Cut it out.
So
Right.
if you're really not, then stop. And of course, I don't know if she ever really said that in real life. If she did, he obviously did not heed her advice. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like that was I enjoyed that character. I think in part because she did have all of the same information as everybody else and
Hmm.
just was not starstruck. And I appreciated that because I find all of these people to be incredibly not impressive.
Yeah.
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 But even Eduardo, though, which is funny because Eduardo, I went and looked him up after, and I mean, he's done pretty well for himself, I would say. Like
I mean,
the person that
they
he's
all
based on.
have, but
Yeah.
but I mean, like the again, like Dennis said, this is about like really, really early Facebook and made during early Facebook, right? It's not really
Yeah.
a retrospective, like long term, right? Um, and the way that Mark treated Eduardo, who was supposedly his best friend, he tells lots of people that this is his best friend.
Hmm.
I'm like, cool, that is how you treated your best friend. And the rest of us should not have expected anything differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was so mean to him.
It's the old, line of when people show you who they are, believe them. And speaking about the character in the movie, Mark Zuckerberg, he shows people several different times that he's not a good person and only has his own interests at heart. In many different ways and in many different situations, but people sort of keep coming back to him. At least Eduardo does several different times and being like, well, I'll give you another $18,000, or okay, I'll come out to Palo Alto and see how things are going, or whatever. And, it always comes back to bite him in the ass because, that character is very driven by things in the movie that are kind of goofy. Like they come back to this finals club thing like 50 different times of like, well, I'm sorry you didn't get into the Phoenix Club or the Porcellian or whatever, because you're not blue blood. And that's like what, we're supposed to believe motivated him to screw his best friend out of all this kind of stuff and like get pissed off at the Winklevoss twins and all that kind of stuff. But that's movie bullshit in a lot of ways, but it's also like, I guess somewhat there's some kernel of truth to that.
But it also reminds me of how many times have I heard from like men in tech, like when something comes out about like this guy who's in power, turns out he abused his power, did something like super terrible to somebody, and all his friends are like, they act so shocked and surprised. Like, how could we have seen this coming? Like, I don't know if they are just completely oblivious to all of the red flags that those of us who haven't um, had those levels of privilege, like we kind of had to negotiate and kind of
Mhm.
navigate all of these different areas. We're so sensitive to those red flags. And then, I hear from like my male friends and peers who they're like, this guy, I was like, of course that guy, like open your eyes. Like this is not a surprise. Right.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, I think has remnants of that, of being like, I think a lot of times when people are getting a personal benefit or gaining something by looking the other way, it's really easy for them to do that, right? And that at the end, he seemed so surprised. Where to your point, the character of Mark had been showing him all along who he really was, but so many people are like, well, they would never treat me that way. Well, if they're going to do it to somebody, they could do it to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I read somewhere that David Fincher versus Aaron Sorkin, they both had like different views on Mark Zuckerberg and how they wanted to portray him. And I forget who had wanted to have more of like the, like emotional, like background, like sympathetic spin versus more of he was an asshole. But like, I think that really comes through pretty well in the film. I'm curious in the next upcoming film that they do, if that's going to be, how that's going to be with only Sorkin on board now, I guess. So like,
Hmm.
But I thought that was one of the things in the film that they tried to portray is
Yeah.
this like walking this fine line, even though he did come off as an asshole ultimately.
Oh,
So
in the
one
movie
of
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
so one of the things that's interesting to me because like both the movie characters and those from in real life who I've actually met, like not all of them, just some of them, and I don't know any of them well, just to be clear.
Mhm.
Um, it's not dissimilar from a lot of personalities that we saw in Silicon Valley at that time.
Yes.
Remember when there was like that whole trope of like, oh, the poor misunderstood software engineer who doesn't have any social skills, right? Okay, that is cool, or I shouldn't say cool, but I'm using cool in terms of like excusable, understandable,
Yep.
can have sympathy for, until the age of like 15, right? And a lot of these personalities, you can understand how they started that way. But then when they became an adult and when they started these companies or joined these companies, they got a lot of reward for behaving this way. They
Yep.
were incentivized and rewarded for it. And so they never grew out of it. And so it is difficult, I think, to say that like I would have no empathy for somebody, who's a sophomore in college, away from home for the first time, and is struggling with other humans.
Yeah.
but but if that is still your personality when you are in your 40s, and to be fair, some of the characters in this movie were already well into their adulthood,
Hmm.
and they were giving advice and mentoring, and where it's like the behavior was rewarded. And so it's hard to have empathy for them at this stage in their life, right?
Yeah.
Because this is, you've had a lot of time away from your parents and away from your childhood to learn new skills if you wanted to, right? It's but
If you
that
wanted to is the
exactly
key phrase there. Yeah.
the willingness to understand other people rather than sitting back and assuming that everyone needs to come understand you first, right? And that's kind of how these personalities were. I mean, when I started in Silicon Valley, probably like right after this movie was made, most of the engineers that I worked with were in that awkward stage of their career where they were brilliant in school and now they have to work with a team, and
Hmm.
nobody likes a group project like an engineer, right? um, but most of them developed those skills. These are teachable skills, and most of them became very empathetic. And it was one of the things I think that drew me into the security field was that the engineers that I met in this space were some of the most passionate, empathetic, and human centric engineers that I had ever worked with, because they had gone through the experience of this is what happens if we don't center people in our work,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it is just a choice to be that way, right?
Yeah. And that's very clearly portrayed. Well, they sort of talk around it a little bit in the movie. They don't really get into that empathy versus like egotism so closely in the movie. It's more portrayed in sort of like implicitly rather than explicitly. Like you'll just see them being so focused on their, coding at first, or then finding a way to make money later on in the movie, or then like finding a way to screw their friends out of the money and in the
Yeah.
third
I mean,
act.
I think there's a really stark difference between the way he treats Erica in that beginning scene, which is, I mean, deplorable to say the least, right?
Yeah.
But he seems genuinely shocked that she's not into this,
There's a
right? And and
yeah.
and by the end of the movie, when he screws over Eduardo, he clearly did it on purpose. That is
Mhm.
not a socially awkward kind of situation,
No.
right? that like he did it to hurt him.
Right.
And so that juxtaposition was interesting to me in terms of like there's, for all of the empathy that you want to muster for the I'm just not getting social clues and I don't understand why women are not into this like misogynist attitude. Um, and then but it's not as if you can paint all of his decisions with that brush. There were definitely times where he's like, this is going to hurt the person, and that's exactly why I'm doing it.
Oh yeah, no question. And towards the end, where there's the whole thing with the Sean Parker character, Justin Timberlake's character, where they sort of like the Zuckerberg character sort of offloads some of his guilt for those decisions onto the Sean Parker thing. You know, they sort of let him be the like explicit villain, like telling Eduardo, sorry, you're screwed. We're, you know, security's going to walk you out.
How Silicon Valley was the Sean Parker character's like backstory and explanation for like every single thing, where it's like he has to tell you about this company that was started 20 years ago, and then these
Totally.
people just like he couldn't just answer the question. He couldn't have
No.
just said, "You recognize my date because she's a Victoria's Secret model." No, he had to give you the whole. I'm like, this is so Silicon Valley to think that everybody is interested in the backstory.
Yes, it's so true. Yeah. You know, Lindsay, we've sat in like hundreds of briefings over the years with those kind of people. And I know you have too, Melanie, where you're just like, all right, dude, I don't care who you know or how, like any of this, just get to the point, man. Like,
This is a big part of like media training with these kinds of folks. Is I'm like, like even in back when I used to do media training, I had like this slide that was just like a fire hose, and I'm like, this is what it feels like when you talk about the things people don't care about. Like, we need to distill what you actually have to share to something that people will care about, so that they remember it, so that they repeat it. And if their main takeaway from this conversation is that you talk a lot about yourself, and you said a whole bunch of shit that no one cared about, we're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for.
yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hilarious to me that for a profession that, you know, claims to understand reverse engineering, they cannot do it in a human context.
No. The opening scene that you mentioned, Melanie, and this is one of the few scenes in this movie that I really love, is that opening scene at the Thirsty Scholar pub, where it's just Zuckerberg and the Erica Albright character, who I think is a composite. I don't think that's a real character from everything I read, but they're just having like a sort of a benign conversation, and he's telling her that there's more people with genius IQs in China than there are in the entire United States or whatever, some nonsensical fact. And she's like trying to, you know, slowly get to the point of like, this is not working for me. Like we need to break up. And at some point he says, wait, is this real? And she's like, yes. And he's like, oh, then I apologize. Like that was the only way that he could not recognize any of the human emotions coming from her until she said, yes, this is real. I'm done with you. And he's like, oh, in that case, I apologize. Everything's fine, right?
I have had this conversation with so many tech executives where I'm having to explain to them that the way people feel and the feedback that they're getting and the backlash that they're experiencing is in fact real. And only then are they like, oh, so I should apologize, as if it's like the logical next. Like there was no empathy in that apology. It was a like, what is the fail safe for this behavior? Right?
And it was just a way to move to the next part of the from whatever he wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, that is correct. And the thing that I found interesting, and I don't know if I'm interpreting like Erica's perception correctly. This is just the way that I was reading it. I don't think she sat down in that pub planning to break up with him.
No.
He convinced her of it as he was talking.
He talked her into breaking up with him. Yes. Yeah.
Like there's like this moment where it's like the look in her eye changes and she's like, I can't do this anymore. This is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's
What does she say? She's like, dating you is like dating a
a
stairmaster
stairmaster.
or something. Like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
which
great
is
line.
it's she gets like that character gets like 5 or 6 of the best lines in the movie, and she's only in I think 3 total scenes or maybe 2. That scene, and then later on where he runs into her at the restaurant, sort of after everything is launched, and she tells him off again, which is great. But the end of that first interaction where I forget the exact wording, but she essentially says, you're going to go to your grave thinking that people don't like you for whatever reason, and I'm here to tell you it's because you're an asshole. It's not because they're jealous of you or
Yeah.
whatever,
I
the
feel
other
like
thing
I feel like
is.
this statement is made in so many Facebook exit interviews. Like at least when I was there, the company had a very difficult time understanding truly why people didn't like them.
Mm,
Um, and it, obviously, like I said, it's been like a decade since I was there. Different people now,
yeah,
but it was just such a huge part of my early career working with people being like they just do not see reality the same,
yeah,
and they feel entitled to define what reality should be for everybody else, right?
yeah,
That there were times during my time there where I felt like, am I really being asked to convince people that the sky is purple when it is clearly not? Is that really the assignment? And
yeah,
sometimes that really was the assignment. And so I think, that look that Erica gets on her face where she's like, no, no, this is the end. I remember that day for me at Facebook. I remember it clearly.
I think we've all had that, whether it's with a partner or like a company or something else, something in your life where you're just like, well, that's that. Like, see ya. Like, can't
Yeah.
yeah.
You,
Um,
you can't fix
no.
things that don't want to be fixed.
That's the irony of what you're describing too is, this is all about a social media platform. Like, this is like how people are making digital connections, how they're interacting online. And like, the fact that this movie depicts the creators and the people who are making those policies as people who are incredibly antisocial, who don't miss or like have those kind of cues, is just like so fascinating to me.
I mean, it was. Now, I want to recognize that this was like a dramatized film, right? These are not exact words that people said. But the concept of creating a social network that was never really about any of the other people, it was just how can we make it easier for you to get information about other people without having to engage with them or
Hmm.
have or ask them the question
Right.
or you know ask permission or consent or any of these things, right? It was so much of the decision was about how can I, as like the main character in my own story, gather as much information as I can without having to let other people know that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, it started out as like a sort of a clone of like Hot or Not or something like that in a, called Face Mash or Face Mash. I think Face Mash. And yeah, there was no like grand plan behind it, as you said, Melanie. It was like, how do we, there's a pretty good, even as much as I hate narration and voiceover, there's a pretty good montage scene towards the beginning where right after Mark leaves that bar, kind of runs back to his dorm and starts like live blogging how mad he is at this Erica character,
Yeah.
and also like starting to um, get the proto version of the Facebook by stealing all these photos from the various
Also, we
residence
had
hall.
Twitter by then, so the fact that he was blogging it is hilarious to me.
It's a good point. Yeah, live journal. That was one of the, like, I took a screenshot of it. It's like, and I think the name of his live journal was like Zuck on it. I was like, this is just the
Oh,
most,
yeah.
2003 shit ever. But
But
yeah,
he gets stuck in that.
yeah,
There is not
yeah.
a whole bunch of like maturing post
Oh,
post this film.
certainly not in the well, certainly not in the movie. Like there's no
Yeah.
maturing whatsoever. I think maybe in the Eduardo character, because it especially once by the time he shows up at the house in Palo Alto and like sees all the chaos that's going on there, he's like, obviously he's getting screwed in the business sense, but he just looks around. He's like, he's the same age as these people. He's like, these are children. Like what are they doing? Like this is a business, and they're jumping off the roof into the pool and like
Yeah,
whatever.
I think there is often a misunderstanding that as some of these individuals become more savvy at curating a public persona, that there is maturing happening in the background.
Oh,
Like
yeah, no,
it is a lot of stunted growth. And the fact that you now have a team of people who can like airbrush things for you does not mean that you have significantly changed as a person in terms
no,
of maturity.
not at all. No. In fact, I mean, that's one of the things that Rashida Jones's character says in that very last scene is something along the lines of, look, just apologize and pay him off. It's a speeding ticket in the grand scheme of things,
Mhm.
And then she says, you're not an asshole, you're just trying to be one or something like that, which, is all a very depressing but accurate depiction, summation of all of that. Like, just give the guy the money. It doesn't matter. You're going to make 8 gazillion more dollars in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talked about how much we like that closing statement from her character, but hypothetically speaking, the very next day, when you wake up and make the same decision, you now
Yeah.
have become the asshole, right? Like
Mm.
you only get, I don't want to say excuse because I don't think any of it is excusable, but like you get to a certain point where you're not pretending this is in fact who you are.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. If you're doing it over and over, that, at some point you are what you do.
Yeah, 100%. Like what else are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think and do different things, which one are you? The one that lives in your head or the one that lives in the world?
I know. I feel like we see that too with Justin Timberlake's character as well, where like he's just like paranoid and just people are out to get him, and I think that's fun. And I didn't realize this, but I guess Jonah Hill was like up for that role
I,
too,
Hmm.
which is
Although I
hilarious.
will, although I will say, just based on my experience, I don't think Sean's character. I I don't know Sean in real life. I don't know how he really felt about any of this, but at least the things that his character said in the film, I don't think was paranoid. That shit really does happen,
oh,
and so
I had the same
like,
reaction. Yeah. I was like, that very accurate of what happens. Yeah. I
yeah.
don't, I don't,
And it
yeah.
just the whole thing again, just like it's and the reason why I think it's particularly interesting in Sean's case is because it was very early tech startup culture, right? But he
Mhm.
was not fighting other tech people. He was fighting a legacy industry, right? And so the a lot of this stuff that I think got exposed through tech because tech was the industry going through this at the time where all of the technology and media channels and everything came online to expose a lot of this behavior. But clearly, this was existing in the music industry previously, right? The
Yeah.
executives in the music industry felt like this was okay. I think we have all studied enough U.S. history to understand that like oil and railroad executives also felt like this was acceptable behavior. Like it just it was not limited to Silicon Valley in tech, but we know about a lot more of it because of all of the other things that were coalescing at the same time. And it's just, I think, really sad that we can't seem to break this cycle regardless of what business we're in.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is the Sean Parker character in the movie, they explain sort of his Napster backstory, that he was one of the founders of Napster along with Sean Fanning. There's an interesting security connection there. Both of those people in real life were members of the Woo Woo hacking
Mm-hmm.
crew. Sean Fanning, I think, more than Sean Parker, actually. But um, the Sean Parker character in the movie, Justin Timberlake, seems to have learned all of the wrong lessons from his Napster failures. Like in that, the first meeting between Sean Parker and Eduardo and Zuckerberg with the Christie character,
When they're
at
at the restaurant.
the sushi restaurant. And he's explaining like, oh, we took down the record industry or something. And Eduardo's like, did you really? Did you win? Because I think you went bankrupt. And, Timberlake is like, oh, do you want to buy a Tower Records? Like very cockily saying, oh, we actually did. But he did, like, that did not end well,
But then,
but the character is like, oh, I won. I'm still at it. I'm out here, like I'm doing the thing. And you're just like, ugh, God.
Dennis, this is like giving me deja vu of like so many conversations that I had with executives during my time. Like the definition of success was just so there was a lot of misalignment, I would say, in terms of
Yeah.
what success
Yeah.
looked like. And so like, I mean, after I left Facebook, I went to Uber. So I mean, like, there's and I joined Uber. I think it was just under a year before Travis left, and so it was the same kind of personality types, right? The same kind of traits of like, we want to disrupt something. We like, our mark on the world is to just break something,
Mhm.
right? I mean, my little company that I started 5 years ago was more profitable than Uber until just recently, right? So it's like, did you really win? Like, if it takes 20 years for your company to turn a profit, is that winning? I mean, is it? But maybe it is for the people who made a lot of money, but a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, I think, unnecessary damage in the process and the methods of some of these companies. And so this idea of I'm winning because I beat some opponent who didn't even realize they were in the fight.
Yes, some
You know,
imaginary.
but
Yeah.
it's just this and it reminds me so much, even like as we've seen a lot of these executives get involved directly with each other on social media, where I'm like, stop trying to win
Mhm.
this conversation. Like, winning the conversation is not the point, right? And the person who has the last laugh in the conversation may not actually be the winner. You may actually end up looking the most foolish because you're the one that kept going.
Yeah.
So it just, yeah, this whole concept of like what winning actually means is often different for a lot of these folks. And it's interesting because what they consider to be winning may not be what their shareholders consider to be winning, which may not be what their employees consider to be winning, or their customers. And so the fact that there's misalignment on what the goals are is an issue number one. But then getting them to articulate, like, if you actually had like a corporate communications team that was structured to accomplish the personal winning goal of an executive, I mean, we would have made very different decisions.
Yeah.
And so, there were times where we would placate the executive with, okay, here's the shiny object that you think is a trophy, because we're thinking long term over here, right? So yeah, there's a lot of things in these personalities that, like, this is why that's when you told me this was the movie we were watching. I was like, oh God, this is, I'm gonna have to call my therapist after this. Like, there's because these are trends that carry. They weren't specific, honestly, to Zuckerberg. They weren't specific
No.
to Facebook. They they exist in so many companies, so many organizations, and it's just this whole, I don't know, culture of, when once you become whatever your definition of success is, you think you did it by yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's entirely accurate. Yeah.
Like, I can't remember which character it was that was like, if your friends want to sit on my shoulders and call themselves taller.
That was Zuckerberg talking about the Winklevoss twins. If your clients want to sit on my shoulders and call
Yeah,
themselves tall, and I was like, first of all, those guys are both like 6'2". I think they say it in the movie. Like I'm 6'2",
they are
250, and there's two of
objectively
me.
tall.
Yes, they're
Yeah, yeah,
yes, Army Hammer, objectively tall. Yeah. Which, we haven't really even talked about that whole aspect of it, like the lawsuit framing of this. We talked about the deposition part, but like
I
the
found
whole
it. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, like, the whole bit about these two, um, you know, extremely handsome twins from an extremely privileged background being aggrieved, and were, because they, somebody stole their idea or whatever, is always very funny to me when I see this. Like, obviously they had a legitimate case. Like, they got a whole bunch of money out of this, but
Yeah,
us, like them playing the victims throughout the movie, is really funny every time to me. You just like them sitting around in their dorm room, like
yeah.
they're talking shit about us in the Harvard Crimson. It's like the most like privileged, like jerk
Yeah.
behavior. It's just,
Well, and I enjoyed the scene where they're talking to the is it the university president or the
oh, Larry
provost or
Summers. Yes. The
yeah,
president of Harvard, the
yeah.
former
And
treasury
and
secretary, as he reminds
and
them.
and to your point, they're going on playing the victim, and he's like, "How did you get this meeting again?" And his assistant is like, "Oh, their dad knows a guy," and he's like,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, exactly." Like, like
Yes.
where's the harm here to your like privileged status?
Right.
But yeah, and I agree with you. Obviously, they had legal footing, for their case. But also, I was like, what was I doing as a sophomore in undergrad?
Oh,
Like,
not that.
not calling lawyers.
No. Oh my God. No.
Yeah. Or like when after the what was it? They were at like a rowing competition and they were at like the reception after and just like casually bumping shoulders with like super famous people and we're just like just
A
moping
prince.
around. Like yeah, the
Yeah.
prince. Like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's the level of, victim we're dealing with there.
Well, and not only that, but they were pissed by what the people were saying. How dare the prince tell me better luck next time?
Yes. Oh, the race was so close. Good job, boys. Like little pat on
Yeah.
the head. They were so mad about that. Yeah. I did read like a quote from the actual Larry Summers, who
Uh-huh.
recalled that meeting with these guys like pretty clearly. He said one of the things you learn as a college president is that if an undergrad is wearing a tie and jacket on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, there are two possibilities. One is that they're looking for a job and have an interview. The other is that they're an asshole. This was the latter case. Rarely have I encountered such swagger, and I try to respond in kind. I mean,
It's amazing.
the president of Harvard is saying that you're too arrogant. You've got you've got a problem.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
In the movie,
Well,
wasn't
and
he was like, yeah.
He
He had
dismissed him
melody.
pretty hard. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good, but
well, and the other thing, not to get like too like macro about it, but I mean, they did have a legitimate case in terms of
yeah,
the IP, but like a lot of people had their ideas stolen by like not everybody in the United States has this kind of recourse, right? So it's like we still have a
exactly.
system that is like privileging the already privileged.
Yeah,
Like think about, for example, like how many ideas like Facebook stole since this time period, right? Sometimes they legitimately bought competitors, other times they just stole ideas. And it was just like
this is what
our legal
America is.
system is just not really set up to, like, the average person would not be able to just like file a lawsuit like this and pay attorney's fees in order to, get this kind of compensation.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you described earlier, Lindsay, like how many different sort of semi versions of this idea you saw while you were in college. Obviously, like after Facebook, but in that same kind of time period, like, oh, it's Facebook, but this, or it's Facebook, but this a little bit different, like almost like Uber for A, B, C, or D, which, we've seen a million of
I
too.
don't know why people said that. I was like, okay, so that just means that you're not profitable and you're incredibly
You're
disliked.
offloading your work to other people. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Fighting labor laws, not wanting to give people
Yeah.
like adequate compensation and benefits. Yeah, cool, cool, cool.
Yeah. What's interesting too is that the issues in this movie are so different from the issues that Facebook dealt with in the decade after. This was, well,
Oh,
I guess 2 decades after. I mean, yeah, you look at some of the main points of conflict in the movie, and it's like, who owns what, or like, all these other different things, like how do they drive revenue and all these, but now looking back at knowing what we know, like Cambridge Analytica, like all the, the Facebook files, like everything that's kind of come out over the past few years, it's just really weird rewatching this with that kind of new context in mind.
yeah. I mean, the cute little disagreement between the Eduardo character and Zuckerberg's character about selling ads as a point of contention is hilarious, because Zuckerberg's character is like, look, the Facebook is cool. If we start putting up pop-up ads for Mountain Dew, it's not going to be cool anymore, which is just, when you think about, probably within a year of that statement being made, like, it's an ad platform. It's a brilliant, perfectly designed ad platform, but at that point it wasn't. It was allegedly a social network, but that being a bone of contention between the two founders of like, well, how are we going to monetize this by selling ads? No way, that's not cool. We can't. Okay, like obviously that was always going to happen, but it's just, that's again, I think some movie nonsense, but um yeah, it's given what's happened in the last 15 years since the movie came out, it's very cute. And
Yeah.
there's I think the title card at the end gives you a little bit of information about like, oh, there was a settlement paid to the Winklevoss twins and to Eduardo, and then it says that um, Facebook, and this is 2010, was valued at, what was it? It was like $25 billion or something at the time that the movie came out, which is, yes, $25 million. I looked it up yesterday. Meta as a whole is valued at 1.6 trillion right now. Obviously, that includes things besides Facebook itself. But the difference between $25 billion and 1.6 trillion is like, I can't even calculate. It's, that kind of math is just, it's mind boggling. So, um, yeah, it's, it's kind of a wild thing. But Lindsay, how much do you remember? Like, was Facebook like a huge deal when you were in college? Like, did people care about it? Like, did you use it all the time to be like, oh, where are my friends going tonight? Or like, what are people up to?
Yeah, yeah. I would say the biggest thing we used it for was, yeah, everyone would take their, digital cameras out to parties and take a million photos and then upload it into albums. And you'd spend like the next day, like, looking through the pictures and all that, which is absolutely hilarious because it's so different now. Like, I would say Facebook in how it's used now is like more of like a, well, maybe it's just my own age right now, but like check your town, like local town group,
Yeah.
like see what's going on, or like seeing these random posts that really aren't having anything to do with your friends. So yeah, I think it was pretty heavily used in the way that they described it in the film. And like, we also came from, I was coming from, growing up with MySpace and some of these other platforms they also talked about, which, the irony
Friendster.
a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Like, but like the irony in the movie of them being like, Facebook is so exclusive and that's going to be like the hook. And then, oh no, we're going to expand it like to all these other colleges and now like internationally. Like
Yeah.
by the end of the movie, it just like had bloated over. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would say like the way they were using it and the way they intended to use it in the movie, it was like definitely resonated with me in terms of how I grew up using it, at least in college.
Yeah, I mean they talk about I've never had a Facebook account. I'm very proud to say that. But it was like it obviously not when I was in college, but the way that they talk about it when they decide to expand from Harvard to I think they talk about like Yale and Columbia and then Stanford after that or whatever. All these like very high-end exclusive schools, of course, very quickly as a way to like gain members, but they still wanted to keep it as like an exclusive thing almost. Like, yes, we'll expand it, but we're not going to, certainly not going to give it to like state colleges or anything like that. Like, we're not going to give it to, UMass or something like that. God forbid. It's still got to be the, the, the blue bloods.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's not like it's. What's funny too is how people use social media now and how different that is. Like, and I know Instagram is funny because I think people are becoming or have become a lot more aware of like how they want to keep their lives private,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of like holding your pictures to your chest a little bit, like trying like not revealing too much or like yeah, there's just a lot of differences now between how people use social media and the focus on likes, the focus on trying to get followers. It's just all so different.
Yeah. I think people went very quickly from like put everything on there. And then within a few years, people were like, well, wait a second, I shouldn't be putting anything on here, especially like pictures of my kids or shit like that. I can remember when like our kids were young or my sister's kids were young and I was like, uh, no, no pictures whatsoever going on. Like, we're not doing that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's and now like with TikTok and everything else, kind of see how things
Yeah.
continue to change. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no doubt, no doubt. Anyway, I think you mentioned towards the beginning, Linz, that there's a sequel in the works for this, and Sorkin is the one. Sorkin is apparently writing it, but Fincher is not directing it. So I don't know who the director is. I'm not sure if they've even gotten one signed on, but um, I don't know if I'm going to be super eager to see it. It seems like it's going to focus on some of the election issues, if I read the descriptions right. Um,
yeah,
that does not
yeah.
hold a lot of appeal to me, honestly.
Yeah, I'd be curious how many people go see that one because, yeah, it's about like apparently about the Facebook files where this whistleblower came out and talked about how Facebook was prioritizing like profit over, the internal knowledge that its platform was harmful for teens or for politics and
Yeah,
or even just like political violence in some cases, disinformation. Um, so I think I agree with you, Dennis. Like that just hits a little close to home right now.
it
Um,
does. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to have the same feel or mood that the social network had. So
No,
um, we'll see.
no, I don't think so.
And they didn't get Jesse Eisenberg back either.
Right.
Um,
I
they,
think I
Jeremy
saw, maybe it
Strong,
was you that told me it was going to be Jeremy Strong as
yeah,
Zuckerberg.
which is hilarious. Yeah,
Ugh, yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of his, so I don't know. I'm not a huge Eisenberg fan either, so I don't, one way
Yeah.
or the
I
other.
think they both fit the part pretty well.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Eisenberg did a great job. I mean, you can't, like, it's hard to imagine The Social Network with anyone else playing him, honestly. Um, it's one of those parts where you're like, I can't really picture another actor doing it, but um, yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I yeah, I don't know if that's one I'm going to see. So we'll
No, I
see.
won't be standing in line, as you said. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think part of it is that the news cycle these days moves so quickly that it feels like this has been it was so long ago. Like I'm more interested in like documentaries now rather than
Yeah.
the dramatizations, because I'm like the gossipy salacious piece of it, like it had its 15 minutes and like I'm over it, like
Hmm.
I'm interested in the facts. I'm interested in, of course, anything that is being revealed for the first time, because I do believe wholeheartedly that we need to learn from our mistakes and that people should be held accountable for decisions when they knew better. But collectively as a society, we deserve to know the truth, but that's not necessarily what you get from these dramatized versions of
Yeah.
history,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's important to remember, even though these are very accurate or very, uh, forceful portrayals of real people, that this was a fictionalization. These are, it's, there's dramatic license taken. They, leave things out. They play other things up to move the story along, and if you look at any of the contemporaneous writing about the production of the movie and Sorkin's writing of the script, like, they're very open about that. Obviously, they're like,
I
look,
mean, like,
we picked
you
the
have
things that are dramatic to make a movie.
when you have Sorkin writing your script, it's not about like precise accuracy.
No, it's about like 800 words per minute of dialogue
Yes.
in your face
Well,
for 2 hours.
yes, about something that should have taken you about 90 seconds to communicate, which means everything beyond that was like manufactured,
It's,
right?
yeah, movie bullshit. Yes, but
Yeah.
some
I,
entertaining.
yeah. I mean, I think the thing that might potentially have more interest in my mind on the new movie compared to the previous ones is that because of Facebook's size and influence at this point, it's hard to have a conversation about US history or US
Mhm.
politics or even global history at this point, right? Without having a conversation with them, which, like we mentioned earlier, like people have different definitions of winning. I think there are a lot of people in Facebook's leadership over the years who would consider that a win, that they got a page in all of these history books. I question whether or not the like net sentiment of that page should be considered a win or not. But I am particularly interested in how all these things do connect together, and I do think the fact that this is not going to be a movie that's just about a company, because Facebook passed that point a long time ago.
Yeah,
This is going to be a movie about their role in a much bigger story.
right.
And
Yeah,
in that sense, for me, it has more appeal because it's a way to understand a bigger picture than like who actually had the idea first. You know,
yeah.
Yeah. That brings to mind, I'm totally blanking on the name of that movie, but the one that came out recently about four tech executives who kind of bunker up in a
Oh
ski
God,
house.
oh
Mountain
yeah,
Head.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like the world is burning outside because of, misinformation and just the platforms that they've created. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was
that
just
you're
that.
that even though it's like extreme satire and spoof, is so, like, some of that is so accurate, like the way that those four dudes act and the way that they just talk about like how to profit off the end of the world is incredible. It's just,
And they also end up turning on each other by the end
yes.
of the. I mean, maybe this is like a spoiler alert, but
Yeah, sorry.
like they're not all friends at the end.
Right. Four
Um,
masters of the universe try to kill each other. Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting because it's like the things that bring them together. I'm sorry, now we've like movie hopped to a completely different film, but the things that bring them together, I'm not sure that it's like bonding as much as it's I have found a new game to compete in and I
Hmm.
don't want to get out of the game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I care about these people or that I even like them.
Oh no, like they spend half of the movie, a movie that I absolutely hated, they spend half of the movie comparing their net worths. Like there's a
Yeah.
whole like celebration thing in the middle of the movie when one of them passes the other for some reason. I
Yeah.
can't even remember what the circumstances were, but it's just yeah.
Can you imagine like going
Oh
away for a
god, no.
weekend with friends and
No.
just being like competing with each other the entire
No.
time?
No. The last thing that my friends and I talk about when we go away for like a golf weekend is work. Like, no, or certainly not our net worth. Good Lord. No, it's the
Yeah,
most
and
depressing,
and and
like
yet
dystopian.
they have FOMO about not being invited or not
Yeah.
being there. And
Yeah.
to like, we all have our own kind of psychological demons, I guess, that we struggle with, right? Like some of us are addicted to these men's products and some of these men are addicted to each other.
Yeah. Well, boys never grow up. I think that's the lesson from all of this.
The takeaway.
I mean, in all fairness, I feel like the boys have had a sufficiently long run at being in charge of things.
Couldn't agree
we
more.
we have
Yeah.
seen how things are playing out.
Yeah. How's that working out? Like the literal thing that all security people say to somebody is, how's that working out for you? Like, what's the outcome
Yeah,
been? Not good.
yeah,
Not great.
yeah,
Let's try something else.
yeah. But again, it depends on what your definition of success is,
It's true.
Dennis.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mel. All right. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I'm sorry to have made you watch this movie. I think I'm sure you'll
It
never
was
watch it
it was
again.
helpful. It was helpful that it was before my time, right? That
Yes,
there,
I-
it was not about any conversations I had to hear in real life.
right. I checked that before I texted you. I wanted to make sure that it was before your time.
I mean,
Um,
the Uber stuff hits a little bit differently when you're like, I was in the room for that. This is not what happened.
right. Yeah. Oh, I can imagine if there was a version of this for when you were at Uber, it would be a whole different ball of wax. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would not have said yes.
No, I know you wouldn't have. Yeah. Yeah. Well, next time we'll have you on for a fun movie. How about that?
Okay.
Okay.
What do the fun movies?
I don't
What kind
know.
of movies are those?
You can pick any kind of you can tell that our definition of hacker movie is very loose. So you can, as long as we're not talking about like Runaway Bride or,
Who do you think I am, Dennis?
I know who you are. It's not that.
And how
Yeah.
old do you think I am?
Not that old. That's for sure.
I'll send you some suggestions for consideration.
Sounds great. We'll let you pick the next one. Sounds good.
Excellent.
All right.
For
Great to
for
see
the
you.
record, my favorite techie movie is Tron Legacy.
Oh, what? That came
Yeah.
out the same year as this. Did you know that? I
Okay, but
happened.
this is what I was watching instead.
Okay. So I looked up like the box office numbers. Tron Legacy, way ahead of this movie. So that should make you feel good.
Oh, shocking.
Yeah. Yes. But so was like Prince of Persia and Toy Story 3 and Iron Man 2 and all kinds of other stuff.
Okay, but the Toy Story franchise is in fact very valuable.
It rules. Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, Tron Legacy. I'll have to check that out. I saw the original Tron in the 80s when I was
I watched the original Tron after I saw this one.
Oh, okay. How did that go? I'm interested to hear how I don't think I've seen Tron Legacy, honestly.
I mean, it was interesting. It's like having you're essentially jumping into the sequel having never seen the first one. Now, the good news is you don't really need the whole backstory of the first one to
I'm sure
understand what's
not.
happening in
Yeah.
Tron Legacy. Um, but like after I went back and watched the first one, which first of all was just a wild experience in terms of production quality.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Yes.
um, but it because the first one is essentially the story of Tron, and in Tron Legacy, they don't tell you where Tron. They tell you like where he came from, but they don't tell you everything that's happened from his creation to now.
Okay. Okay.
And so watching the first one after the fact was just kind of like getting the backstory on that particular character and how this whole universe came into existence.
Interesting. Okay. I'll check it
Yeah.
out. I'm not afraid. I made you watch this, so I'll watch
I
that.
mean, I will tell you the reason I watched this movie to begin with is because Daft Punk did the soundtrack.
Okay. Look, that's a legit reason. I've watched movies for worse reasons than that, I promise.
So like the soundtrack of the movie is really good. I love the costumes, the aesthetic, everything. Like the story is somewhat secondary to all the cool things that are on screen.
Okay. All right. We can add that to the list.
I feel like I have a lot of nostalgia for the 2010s right now. Just
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
Daft Punk, like watching Tron Legacy in the theater, like
Well, I was watching Loot the other day, a show on Apple TV. Maya
Wait, what is it?
Rudolph's show called Loot. It's Maya Rudolph's show on Apple
Oh,
TV.
oh, oh.
She's
Yes,
like
yes,
a
yes.
billionaire.
Yeah.
And I love the song that they used for the opening credits, and so I went to get the soundtrack for the show. And this is the second season, and the first season has music that's like even older. That's like this, like 20 times like hip hop, like
Oh,
in earlier. So it's just kind of like I've also, Lindsay, been in somewhat of a nostalgic phase lately because I've been listening to like all these old like hip hop songs and
I'll
I
have to
love
go
it.
down that rabbit hole.
good dance music.
I
Yeah.
love it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you both. Mel, it was great to see you. Thanks so much for dialing in from Mexico. We appreciate it.
Twice. I dialed in twice.
Twice. You're a champ. Thank you.